Okay, guys, welcome aboard Southern Estate here, guys and gals. Welcome aboard Southern Estate here. Today I want to get back into boat buying a little bit. Where you got Steve just bought Summer Breeze here, and the survey didn't go absolutely perfect. As we wanted. There was a few issues that came up, and that's why you pay a surveyor to make sure. But I think in the end, I think he's going to be okay. I think the boat was a fair deal in this market. Had the market been a little bit worse, and who knows what's going to happen with the market here. You got all this stuff going on with the war and everything like that. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's... I don't think the price of boats are so much going to drop in the next year or two like people think they are, because I think people are hanging on to their assets more. But there is just so much, I don't even know how to explain this. There's just so much junk out there. And you got to be very, very careful. And you have to have a good surveyor. There's just no way around it, because you really need to know what you're getting into when you're buying one of these, especially these 40-year-old trawlers. When you saw like that boat the other day, that Bayliner that we got involved with, that 3988 Gerald's boat, which I believe is sold now. For $120,000, what was so great about that boat? Why would somebody pay, 15 to 20%? I think it was actually a little bit more than that. I think it was about 30% over buck. It was because it was freshwater, because it was such a clean boat. Like, believe it or not, half these boats, when you get into them, I've heard it just time and time and time again, like they go to the sea trial and the boat gets lost because you can't even steer the boat. And now on a twin screw, believe it or not, you can just steer the boat with your engines. But that doesn't work really well on the sea trial. Even on Summer Breeze, we probably should have, me and Don should have bled the steering before he went out on the sea trial. So if you own a boat, man, it's just so important to just go through the basic systems, check your lights, make sure all your lights are working. Make sure you got a horn. If you don't have a horn, have an air horn, because you got to check. You got to go do a sea trial. And to do one of these sea trials, the boat has to be in running order. So, and if your boat's been sitting for a year or 2 years, just go to the basics, and make sure that steering's working. Make sure that your engines aren't going to overheat. That's a big one, because the boats just sit there, and they just sit there and sit there and sit there, and nobody's running them. You'd rather have a boat that was run every month, which I think he does that on Summer Breeze. He pretty much comes out here. I know he starts the engines every month, but even then, we have an air conditioner that's brand new. He just installed it, but in the survey, it came back not working, and it was just a little part. It was the head, the little, the controller. Quit working on it, and so he called, and they have a new one coming, but it didn't go well in the survey because out of the two brand new air conditioners, one of them's already down. So anyway, it's just stuff like that. Now that was no big deal, because like I said, we were able to fire both air conditioners up because we just switched out he has two identical air conditioners, and we just switched the control panels on them, and we're able to fire up both air conditioners so that the new buyer can see that both air conditioners do work correctly. And then the company is going to send out the parts under warranty. But it's just one of those things. It's just, again, being prepared, knowing what you're getting yourself into. And for the people out there looking to buy these boats, I mean, our number one thing is when you walk in the back there, do you smell diesel? If you smell diesel, you can just say, have a nice day, get off the boat. Number two, you walk in there, all these boats will have, I don't want to say an odor. Like when you walk in the back of Southern Estate, there's no odor. But I walk in some of these, and there'll be a slight little, like, I want to call it like that old trawler odor. And it's just, it is what it is, but you cannot get past that diesel. If it smells like diesel, it smells like a bad deal to me, and you need to walk away from it. But if it doesn't, it's not, the boat is not going to be perfect. Anybody out there looking for that perfect boat, just, especially on these older ones, even the newer boats, I've heard over and over again, it's like, it didn't work out. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. And one of these older boats, especially if it's been in salt water its entire life, there's a huge difference in boats that have been in fresh water and boats that have been in salt water. You take a 40-year-old neglected trawler that's been in salt water for 40 years, sometimes they're better off just going to the chipper. And a lot of these boats, I know it's disappointing, and you got to get up and you got to turn over every single leaf and look at everything. And it helps, especially when you're doing that, to look at all of them. I found one the other day. It was almost impossible, I would say, to get aboard this, but it was a Hans Christian 44, absolutely gorgeous boat, just gorgeous, like. But I think it's sold too. But so I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. You know what I'm saying? It's possible that it could go on the market, and it's possible. But I think they got somebody looking at it next week. But it was a privilege to be able to go onto it and see when somebody's selling a boat well below buck value. And that's something else I want to talk about, because so the buck value of a boat is just what the bank and the insurance looks at. And in this market, if you're right in there, that 10, 20% over buck, I think you're going to be okay. But when you find like these, we talked about it in a video a couple days back where, these little Grand Banks, these little 32 Grand Banks, the buck value on these boats are right around $50,000. The actual sale price of them, you can pick one of these things up in less than perfect shape for under $50K or under $20K. And they have the Ford Lehman engines in them. They have, typically on a Grand Banks, it's got good fuel tanks. Everything's in fairly good shape. And the value of that is picking the boat up for under $50K. I mean, for under, half of what the buck value is. So do you argue with these people very much about the value of their boat, especially like, I'll use the Hans Christian. This is for sale by owner. These guys are asking $225. The buck value on it's $275. And do you really start beating them up over money? Not on those situations. What I think where we start asking for discounts or asking for money right up front from the seller is when you go into a boat and the boat is like if the buck value on the boat is, let's say, $90,000, let's just use $100,000, and the people are asking $150,000 or $200,000, do you start asking for discounts? Yes. But you take that same boat and the guy listed it for $50,000. What do you do with that guy? Well, it depends. It could still be a boat that's just worth going into the chipper pile, but at $50K, if there's some value there, if you can see the value in the boat, no, I don't think the bank and the insurance companies are already saying this, and you shouldn't beat them up. You shouldn't try and beat them up any more than what that buck value is. And anybody can go on time. It's just buck, BUC, and you just go on there. You can look up the value. I think you get 3 for free or something like that. If you just give them your email and stuff like that, they'll give you 3 boats for free. Or if you got a broker friend like me, you just call me up and say, "Hey, Paul, what's the buck value of this boat?" And I'll send you the report on it. But it's just something you got to be careful with, and something you got to be thinking about. And are any of these boats perfect? No. Where I'd always look, the best value I can tell anybody is below that water line, because that's where all the money's going to be spent. Coming up at top here and putting new furniture in, like me and Bev put all new RV furniture in here. And when the other day we were talking about the expense of the loop, why my loop went over budget $10,000. Well, it's because I bought all new furniture for this boat, so that was counted in that budget. Had I not done that, I would have never gone over budget. So you just got to keep all that into perspective and all that into mind. You know what I'm saying? What's important to you and what's not important to you. Now, I will tell you this, that after being in the broker business now for literally 6 months or so, I look at what I got out of Southern Estate and the value that I got for it's freaking tremendous. Like I can't explain to you how I lucked into this deal or how I got this deal, and why But is the boat perfect? No, both my transmissions leak. There's a few oil drops in when you run these motors. I put 4,000 miles on here, pretty much, and we changed all the coolers and we changed the transmission coolers. I didn't do a whole lot of engine work, just changed the oils in them. I think I'm on my third oil change on them, but that was 4,000 miles. But the value that I've got for my dollar is just like, it's phenomenal, And is this boat perfect? No, I can show you half a dozen things. I got some fiberglass tore up front. I've got, in the bedroom there around one of our ports, and it's mostly in these boats, what happens is the condensation. Forget about the rain. If you have rain leaks, that's horrible. That'll tear one of these boats up faster than anything. But the condensation around the windows is, especially in the wintertime, and then the people just neglect the boat, and then next thing you know, you start seeing the water marks coming down the sides of the boats and stuff like that. That's when these boats really start to deteriorate and really start to get in trouble. And you got to watch for that kind of stuff right there. That's why we always look for, like, if you see the stain coming down, like these windows right here, that's a big indication that, I don't want to say the boat was neglected, because it probably was neglected. But like me and Bev are in here, all the time washing and polishing the walls, keeping that stuff off. And a lot of it is not, what I guess I'm saying, is not water from the rain coming in. It's more from condensation from the inside, and that's what destroys the fuel tanks in them. Fuel tanks are huge on these old boats. You got to really be careful of that. But you can have a survey done on your fuel tanks, and if they're steel tanks and they were done by like a Graham Banks, the steel tanks on a Graham Banks, they can look rough. But we found out on Virginia Hawkeye that you get up there, scrape them off, clean them off. Do all the work to them and go get a tank inspection. More than likely, they're going to pass their tank inspection. It takes a lot of neglect to really, really hurt a steel tank on one of these old trawlers. Where I think it really starts to play in is when like the CHBs, where they had the black iron fuel tanks in them. Those black iron fuel tanks, that's a whole different ball game than compared to like a 1983, 84, 85 trawlers, where they started putting coatings around the tanks, and they're steel tanks, a little bit thicker steel, a little bit better steel. They're not using black iron no more. They're using actual steel. Those tanks are much better, and they do, a steel tank will last forever if it's taken care of properly. Aluminum tanks are a little bit more tricky, because it's the aluminum itself won't leak. It's the welds that'll start to leak on them. So, it's just stuff that you got to watch for and be careful of when you're looking at these old trawlers, and any of them. And then another thing that you got to really pay attention to is speed. But with speed, you got these motors. When you start getting past 150, 160 horsepower per each one of these engines. So you always want to look at the engines, and if they say NA, that means naturally aspirated engine. That's what you're looking for on a slow trawler. Now, anything that's capable of getting up on step, and what I mean by that, they can get up and go on plane, and typically those boats you can get 12 to 15 miles an hour out of, some of them even 20 to 23 miles an hour, even up to 30 miles an hour. Is there an advantage to them? Absolutely, 100%. It's really what you got to start thinking about that stuff. But those engines, the engine hours on one of those is critical compared to a boat like this one, where it has naturally aspirated engines on it, because those naturally aspirated engines will last a lot longer. And once you start adding turbochargers and superchargers and any type of charger to get that horsepower up, because you can take my engines that I have in this boat, and you can, they put turbochargers on them, and they can get the same exact engine, but they get 100 more horsepower, and they call them 230 horsepower engines in them. And when you try and ask that same engine for an extra 100 horsepower, well, it makes a difference on all the bearings and all the rods, the pistons, and you're not going to get the hours out of them. You just can't. So that's just something that you got to pay attention to. Anyway, you got any question? You have a boat for sale, and you want me to help you sell it, or if you're looking for a boat, call me. Just send me the link on the boat, and I'm happy to help you and take a look at it and just give you my opinion. And at the end of the day, it's just my opinion. for me, it's not all about the money. It really isn't. It's about the love of it. It's about helping people. It's about you doing something in life that's a little bit different, and enjoying life instead of, because I think we get involved in the everything that's going on around, and we forget to live life sometimes. And that's really what my channel's all about, is just living and trying to do the best you can do in this environment that we've been put in. So anyway, peace out. Remember, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, share it with your friends. I do appreciate it, and thank you so much for watching. Remember, live life with no regret. I do. Thanks. Bye.